Hello and welcome to the Dyslexia panel brought to you from the United Way. And we are going to be watching the movie Michael. And then we will be following up with a panel discussion from local experts.
A senior in high school this year and has dyslexia. He was diagnosed in second grade. So I've kind of been at all sides of dyslexia as a parent. I worked in the school districts for about 15 years and I've done private practice. I'm able to test and diagnose dyslexia. And I work with a lot of kids who have dyslexia and some who don't, but just needed more help with reading. And I've seen some great success, but I've kind of been at all sides of it. So I kind of see where everyone kind of comes from.
I'd like to go next. My name is Melissa Margraf. I am the Director of Pupil Services at Sevastopol School District. And admittedly, not an expert in dyslexia at all. Really, really happy to be here. Really happy to be invited to the conversation. I've been at Sevastopol for about 3 years in the director position and have learned very much in 3 years about how, as a district and some of the things that we have to be doing to improve what we're doing so all kids can get the help that they need. So really happy to be a part of this discussion, and thanks again for having me.
I'll go next. I'm Jeanne Schopf. I am a middle school reading interventionist in Sturgeon-based schools. I've been teaching 31 years in the county, multiple grade levels. I've been the reading specialist at TJ Walker for the last 7 years. And I have a daughter with dyslexia. She was identified as a freshman in high school, actually. So I too have a passion to help kids that struggle with reading and a passion for being an advocate for kids with this diagnosis and kids who are struggling readers.
Hi, I'm Carrie Ballman. I have a son who has dyslexia, and he was diagnosed in the 3rd grade. And I also am with Decoding Dyslexia of Wisconsin. I'm one of the state leads, and I have been advocating throughout our county for dyslexia and changes in our school district for about almost 2.5 years now. Very passionate about this, and I have gone through every single one of those emotions that the movie showed. I've seen my son with struggling and also seen him have huge success when he gets a program that works for him. So I'm very, very happy to be here.
Thank you, everyone. And I am Morgan Mann. I work at Door County Library, but I am here as a parent. My youngest son was diagnosed with dyslexia 2 years ago in the middle of 1st grade, but we noticed problems as young as 4K, but didn't know what it was. And it wasn't until I did a ton of research, like the movie, that I was able to figure out what it was. And we started the process of that. So that's why it's, the movie's really raw for me right now because we have those dates. So thank you all for being here. I just want to maybe start off and say, what about the movie surprised you and what didn't surprise you?
Well, I have to say it took place in 1977 and it's 2020 and we're still having the same conversation.
I agree.
Yep.
My father was dyslexic and he went through it, and I didn't get to introduce myself. My name's Amy. I have an 8-year-old who's been diagnosed dyslexic. Yeah, he's right there. How to get into everything. He was diagnosed at 6. I saw signs in 4K, especially having my father diagnosed. Apparently some signs I even missed. It runs in our family pretty rampant, cousins and all that. I teach Head Start right now, but I'm going for my master's, and I did get Orton Gillingham certified last year through the Children's Dyslexia Center. And I have one blessing right now. Well, obviously besides him, but with the schooling, is his special education teacher leans on me and asks me questions about how she can help him and what she can do, and is always asking for education on dyslexia. She's told me she's even put that's what her like goal is for her PPG, for her professional development for this school year. So she's really been a good, I hate to use the word student, but she does rely on me for questions, and will ask me a lot of things, and I will accept, excuse me, feedback and visuals and everything. That was just phenomenal. But that's the sad part, is you don't always have that. And like I said, I'm blessed. I am so blessed because she's great. In fact, I sent her this, but I don't see her on here, which would be really embarrassing if she was. But yes, so yeah, the struggles is the same. The only difference is like I said, my dad was diagnosed and they wanted to put him in the complete mentally retarded room, and hold him back consistently. But it doesn't have to stop you. My dad owned a severely striving business and they just retired last year. So, I mean, dyslexia is not a disabling disability, but people look at it as it is.
Well, on that note, because there is such a difference in the severity of dyslexia, I'd like the panelists to answer, what is your definition of dyslexia?
Well, I like to use the IDA definition, that it's a neurological in origin, and it's characterized by difficulties in accurate word reading, fluent reading, phonological components, and it's often unexpected based on other instruction and cognitive factors.
Yeah, I would agree.
Go ahead.
I would agree with Jeannie too. You know, when as much as I've been reading about dyslexia too, you know, it's just a brain-based condition that affects all aspects of reading and spelling and writing. It's just so comprehensive what it really does, how it affects a child's ability to be able to communicate and read and learn.
Yeah, I would agree with Jeannie as well. I do like the IDA definition, and it's a great question to ask, because even in our own state, they argue the definition of dyslexia. With the guidebook that we helped push through and get for legislation, it was the heated topic of it is, we won't put this book through because we don't agree with the definition. So that's a great question.
I know a lot of, I mean, that's a nice broad way to say it's brain-based, but I know there's certain things where people will say it's flipping of letters, and that happens sometimes. But it's also just how their thought process is entirely different from a neurotypical person, and the amount of creativity that they can bring to the table in the out-of-the-box thinking that everyone says that they want from people. So I like hearing that part as a parent, that there's the other side of the flip of the coin from the more challenging parts of it. So
absolutely. I think too that I think it's something like 35 or 38% of all entrepreneurs are dyslexic. So I saw a cool bumper sticker once. I don't even remember what city I was in, but it said, you know how everybody has the "my student is," what do they have? "My student's an honor roll student" or whatever on the back of their car. This one said, "My dyslexic student is creating a job for your honor roll student." And I thought, yes, that's right. They sure are. But yeah, and also I wanted to add too with the dyslexia is that, now I lost my train of thought. What was I going to say? Oh, as a speech therapist, that, I mean, we are wired as humans to learn language. I mean, we just pick that up from our parents, our caregivers, whatever. We are not wired to read. That's not something that is in us to read. Everyone has to be taught to read. Some people just get it. And like, I don't remember learning to read in school. Our dyslexia comes from my husband's side. I just did. and it came very easy to me, but it's not something we're wired for. And so really, I look at it as, for the therapy of it, is we really have to rewire the brain. And fMRI studies, have shown that when that brain is rewired, that those patterns will go to like those of the neurotypical.
Well, and Chris, that's a great segue to what I wanted to bring up, because over the summer when I was in some coursework, I learned that Dr. Patricia Mathis, she's a researcher from SMU University, through the brain imagery, they discovered that if a child is identified at a young age, 4K, and they're identified and they are targeted and they're given the 33 weeks of intensive 45-minute intervention, the brain will normalize and dyslexia wouldn't exist. So imagine.
I mean, early intervention is where it's at.
How a child's life would be different.
And what really kind of gets to me is the amount of money that school districts spend on reading curriculums and stuff, when if you would implement very simple, basic things back in 4K in kindergarten, it wouldn't matter what curriculum we used. It wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like the things we're talking about doing with the kids in 4K, it's nothing hard. It's so easy. But the teachers just aren't trained on what to do. It's not their fault.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody goes into teaching thinking, hey, I want kids to fail. I mean, obviously, if they knew better, they would do better. So it comes down to the teaching colleges and stuff, and that's a whole other story. But
that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I would say
Well, and
that's
that's-
part of the conversation. I think
Yeah.
that should be part of the conversation,
Yes, it
because
is
that's part of why we have had this conversation for 30 years.
Right.
It does need to get to that level.
Well, and that's a good way of looking at that, because I completely agree. Like with my son is at the Gibraltar School District, and they just recently incorporated Orton Gillingham training into their teacher training for the K through third graders.
Yes.
And they the feedback that I have heard from the teachers is amazing. They absolutely love the training, and some of them even were like, I didn't know that this part existed. We got our curriculum and we thought we were hitting all of it until I got this training, and it has helped them tremendously to be able to see where some students struggle. And like Chris said, do all students struggle? No, some kids can pick up a book and they can understand that, guessing at a word, they can guess at it and they understand that part of it, but that's not what reading entails. To be able to read, you have to understand the sounds that the letters make and that the groupings, and there's kids that they need that extra support, and early on is when they need it. They don't need it in 5th, 6th, 7th grade, because by that time it's too far. It's too much catch up. They can't maintain in the regular classroom. The pullouts get more intense and it's more stressful on the kids. And this needs to happen early on.
Yeah.
And I think that guessing is not reading. I mean, I can see it in the library system where there's, that's the struggle, is always getting the teenagers to read. But now, after experiencing all of this, I wonder if it's because they can't read and they've just been guessing. And so reading is not fun, and they do it because they have to, but they don't come to the library because it's fun, because reading was never taught to them.
Yeah.
Correctly. It was not taught to them correctly.
Well, if you don't enjoy what you're doing, then you don't do it. And so, when the schools stop bringing the kids in for after elementary school, then there's a whole crew that we just never see again. And I can see my son's 7th grade, and he was diagnosed last year. Thank you, Chris. And he doesn't enjoy reading. And so he will never read for pleasure. It's always going to be work, and he's okay and he'll be fine, but it's always going to be work. He's never going to love it and do it for pleasure. And that's sad. As a librarian, that's sad. So.
Kind of like me and exercise.
Yeah.
Don't like it. I don't do it for
when
pleasure.
cheese. No. Well, on that, and speaking from people within different districts in the area or have experience with districts, what does each of the districts here in Door County do to test for dyslexia? Are there any tests happening? And at what ages, if they are happening? Does anyone know?
Well, I mean, I can just, speak for Sturgeon Bay. We don't screen for dyslexia, just like most schools in our state do not. I mean, the reality is Wisconsin's one of the 20 states that does not require screening for dyslexia. There's no legislation for that. And the reality is until we start to get that legislation, which I know our DD group is working on, that will help. But I know that's not the end all be all, but I know in the middle school, when kids come into me, if they're below level in our screeners, I definitely dive into the whole phonological components, the spelling, the decoding. And if they're struggling with those areas, I'm Orton Gillingham trained and I'm working with them. But until really, I believe that there's some sort of legislation at the state level, change will be slow in our state.
And so you catch them at middle school level.
Right.
So is that 6th grade in Sturgeon Bay?
6th grade.
Yeah, she was the one who caught Henry's stuff. And here was me wondering why I could never get him to pick up a book. He seemed to be doing okay. Everyone's telling him his scores are all right, but his reading level is way lower than everything else. And then Jeannie did this a little bit more digging and called me and said, we have a problem, which is the first time anybody in the school district had said, we have a problem.
I think part of it is they don't know what to look for, or they think that it's something else, or do you wait until this, especially for boys, they get in trouble? Because I've had seniors in high school tell me, you know what, I'd much rather get sent to the office than to let my classmates know I can't read. So I will do anything I can to get out of that classroom. So it turns to behavior.
That's a yes, Chris, exactly. That was exactly what happened with my son. He, in the 2nd grade, got an IEP, but it was for behavior. It was for ADHD and, just not an inattentiveness. And it never moved forward to the actual reading part of it. They would put things in place that would help his attention to a point, but then we started medication for his ADHD, and that significantly improved his way of life at school. And they were putting in places like chewing gum, to help things like that, but they based it off of his attention and his behavior instead of where he needed it the most was his reading. And they did do some interventions, which I thought was, at that time, I thought that they were right because they were doing pullouts, but all they were doing is double dose pullouts. It was just more of the same thing that wasn't working. It wasn't specific. It wasn't Orton Gillingham. It wasn't scientifically based to help readers. It was just more of the same. And that didn't go anywhere. More RTI, which RTI is never made to be, it's not made to be a long-term solution for readers. It's RTI is response to intervention. If we had the proper, I'm not saying we as like my district, I'm saying we as a state. If we as a state have a proper intervention that is quick and fast and available immediately when the problems arise, and don't like spread it out for years. I mean, this could be a lifesaver. And I agree with Jeannie and I agree with Chris that screening needs that is a very top priority. We need a screening bill in this state, but then we also need to follow up with that. It cannot just stop at screening. It has to go above, and the whole system has to change, including DPI.
Right.
They have to be accountable for this.
Their new standards, so that's going to help, Carrie. But
I was just going to mention that. Yes, their new standards.
Right.
Yep.
But I mean, it's really hard for me to know, like states like Mississippi and Arkansas and Alabama have all this legislation regarding dyslexia, and here in Wisconsin we sit.
Yep. One of the worst literacy gaps in the nation.
Well, and we're one of 5 states that doesn't look at dyslexia as a learning disability. I called my school and said, hey, I have a neuropsychologist diagnosis of dyslexia. And they said to me, well, that doesn't matter. We don't look at that as a disability.
A lot of districts don't even let you use the word. They won't allow
Because
you
they're
to even say
responsible
that.
for treating
Exactly.
it, then they don't have anybody to treat it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll just call it a reading disability or LD, learning disability.
Mm-hmm.
I think I can jump in a little bit there from the school side. That's Chris is exactly right. You know, school districts would put students through a comprehensive evaluation, and the label would be a specific learning disability. You know, but I do agree with a lot that I heard here. Number one, you know, it's early intervention, and like Amy, I think at Gibraltar, your son is at Gibraltar. Sevastopol teachers as well are very much appreciating and enjoying the multisensory Orton Gillingham experience that they're having too, and it really is opening their eyes as well. One of the things I think is important as school districts to do is to look at the foundational reading skills and making sure that K through 2, right, are implementing, you know, the right interventions to be able to identify early and help students. We as well do not have a dyslexic screener at Sevastopol, but look forward to working with folks to be able to get one. And I don't know how easy they are to find. Over the past year, we've been talking with our CISA 7 representatives to help us do an audit of our early foundational reading skills and just working with them to improve our practice, because we do know that there's many opportunities that we need to improve.
Oh, Carrie, I wanted to add on, you know, IDA does allow dyslexia to be used. It's just that we don't necessarily use it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
My son's IEP says diagnosed dyslexic, but they don't say that they have found that he is dyslexic. They'll say that there's the LD in reading, and it will say that he was diagnosed it, but they won't say that he's getting help for dyslexia. It's for a reading gap.
Yeah, and about the dyslexia screeners, there isn't unless Jeannie can probably talk more about this because she knows more about this than I do, but there isn't a specific dyslexia screener that's marked dyslexia screener.
Well, Sally Shayowitz does have one now.
She does? See? That's why we have experts.
Well, the reality is it's a phonological
Right.
Deficit. And so there are early screeners that can address the phonological deficit. They have to have sensitivity to picking those up in the earliest grades. And I know like Sturgeon Bay schools, I know that's on the panel discussion, like where are you doing in your district? And one thing we're also doing is we're doing a 3-year audit. We spent some time this summer going through our data. We did about an outside consultant come in and we examined all our data K through 12, found where our gaps are. And now we're in the process of finding an outside consultant. We've had a few interviews from people that are going to come in and help us with that audit process. Our coaches, our reading specialists are going to be going to this reading academy put on by CISA 8 actually. So we're going to get 40 hours of PD on foundational reading with the coaches. So we're making those steps forward. We still have a lot of work to do though, but we're moving forward in Sturgeon Bay.
But Jeannie, don't you even find that in addition to the phonological stuff in preschool, teachers, if you just ask them questions like, who doesn't know their left from their right? Who can't say the alphabet? Who doesn't know how to tie their shoes? You know, there's more than just
indicators. There's no
like
doubt.
there's so many early indicators that if teachers would just even use those and say, oh my gosh, he marks all 10 of those things off. You know, go to the left and he goes to the right. You know, all that. He can't tie his shoes. I mean, my son, I think he wore Velcro till he outgrew Velcro. He could not tie his shoes. And I bet today they're still loose.
Yeah, my little Madeline, yep, she couldn't tie her shoes. So
Yeah, and that just has to
I
do with
agree with
sequencing.
all those early indicators, but educators are looking at reading. They're looking at
Yeah, I
functional
understand.
reading skills, you know. Um,
There,
Mine-
like with my son, it was so nice when we did Linda Mood Bell, the program that we did this past year. They used a lot of testing that was able to pick up on those things. Where like with like our district, we use the STAR test, which is very, very bland in my opinion. It's just a screener, and it doesn't hit the specifics that kids need at all. They use Woodcock Johnson. And there's also the CTAP, which is a good testing. The Wyatt 3, which I've heard is also very good. And then the Gray oral reading test is also another one that I've learned through with decoding dyslexia that those are good tests and assessments for kids.
Yeah, I think with my daughter, my issue is when my daughter, third grade, I started noticing that she couldn't keep up with her homework at all. It would take her hours. We would sit at the table from the time she would get home from school to bedtime, just trying to do homework. We'd all go to bed in tears. And I would talk to the teacher and they're like, no, she's doing great. She's doing great. You know, she's a little behind, but she's in an intervention. She's doing great. And finally, by fifth grade, she couldn't even do any homework at all. Like, she didn't know any of it. So I searched on the internet, trying to figure out what can I do? How can I help her? And so I found a place called Dyslexia Reading Connection, and I paid for a screener to be done, and they said that she is potentially dyslexic and dyscalculia. So of course I started tutoring right away. I went to the school with my findings and was just kind of brushed off a little bit. So I went to my insurance and thought, well, if I get a neuropsych eval, they'll have to listen. It's medical, you know, they have to listen to a doctor. And my insurance denied me, saying that it is the school's responsibility, that they would not pay for testing because it's academic related. And the school doesn't do a dyslexic test. So I'm right there. COVID hit. And so they are assessing. We are doing assessments for my daughter, but I don't know what's going to be the outcome. I'm just paying for private tutoring, and she's made so much progress that it's amazing. It's so amazing. She's came a long way.
If there's a children's dyslexia center by you, they do Orton Gillingham tutoring for free, but there is usually a wait list.
There's a 3-year wait list currently, the one that's close to us.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where I got trained, but in Milwaukee.
I'm not sure that we even have there's probably not even anything in Green Bay.
Madison, I think Madison or Eau Claire I think
Yeah.
Madison is the closest.
I just wanted to jump in here real quick. My name is Leslie, and I have a daughter. Sadly, we didn't get her diagnosed until she was 18. So we watched the struggles for many years, and she wanted to understand why school was so hard before she went to college. And we got her answer, and she still struggles. And I've had the opportunity to take a role that's gotten me really connected with the science of reading. And I've just vowed to myself that I don't want any other kid to have to go through that. And so I thank you for sharing your stories. And, I wanted to join to continue to learn more about it myself, because I sadly came into the game late with my own daughter. But to see what can be done and be active in finding a solution for kids that struggle.
I just wanted to, because I know we're wrapping up at 7, right, Morgan? Right. I know, Carrie, you're working really hard with DD and passing legislation, and we talked about DPI has their new rollouts with the foundations of the first it's called, but the reality is the challenges that we have to have great change in the state is the fact that the science of reading is not in our universities. So our pre-service teachers are not getting educated in the science of reading. Matter of fact, they might have just 2 classes in reading, and they graduate hoping to pass the Ford exam. However, there's most of the kids that have to pass the Ford fail it almost every time. My own niece, she had 1 class in her master's program on reading to pass the Fort, and she didn't pass it because it didn't give them the information to pass it. So we don't have the information with our kids coming through colleges, right? We don't have the science of reading in our reading specialist program. So reading specialists are graduating with their master's degree without any knowledge of the science of reading. And so then pre-service teachers kind of lean into those reading specialists, right? Well, they don't know the science either. So what do reading specialists do? Well, they reach out to the state WSRA, right? Wisconsin State Reading Association, as the experts in the field of reading, but yet they've been squelching the science of reading for the last 40 years as well. Matter of fact, their convention this year, out of 52 programs, they have 2 of them, just 2 have anything to do with the science of reading.
You should see their testimony.
Right. So, and then you lean onto our CISAs, and our CISAs don't even have the science. So we have CISA 8 and CISA 9 in Wisconsin that embrace the science of reading, but other than that, nobody else does. So it's going to be a lot of hard work for us to get any kind of movement in the state until we start to get more science into our classrooms.
For our districts here, though, there are resources like the Reading League and such that believe in the science of reading. Can we get the schools at least working together here to help our local region and maybe be the leader for the state?
Well, the Durham County Reading Council actually brought in the Reading League to do a presentation. It was in October, and they presented. It was a mass invite. All school districts got the invite, teachers, administrators, and we probably had 20 people on that call, educators. So
it's a tough one, Morgan, because so many districts have invested so much money and time into their current programs that pretty much balk the science of reading, that don't, allow the science of reading to be in place. Like, look at Lucy Calkins. There's one right there. I mean, the districts have spent so much money into a program that doesn't even touch the science of reading.
What I'm trying to say, Carrie, is they believe that that's working for them. Because
right, that's what I'm saying. I agree with you. Yes, I agree with you.
It's not their fault, is what I'm saying. It's the mindset.
It is, but they also have to look at they have to look at their data, and they have to look at their kids and say, okay, this isn't working, so now it's time to readjust. When you have 5th grade students and over 15% of them did a Linda Moon Bell program that cost $60,000 or $20,000 for a teacher or for a training, you would think that would be some kind of a red flag going forward, saying, okay, you know what? This isn't working. Let's look at our kids. If 60% of them aren't reading at proficient, then we need to make some adjustments. But a lot of them shuffle their feet and say, well, we're doing the best that we can. There really isn't much more. So do I agree that it's not their fault? Partially. But as a parent sitting back and I see these districts that see this and they don't want to make a change, I say, no, it is your fault. It's time to make adjustments and work towards a better progress for the kids.
Right. And not only that, but I think it has to come down from the administration.
Oh, I agree. 100%.
You have to say, you know what? And I'm not going to just plop another curriculum in your lap and expect teachers to spend hours and hours trying to figure it out. They need to be trained and taught piece by piece on what to do with the kids. They need to be shown how to do it with them, but it's got to come from above, because there's so many teachers who they're used to their old system, whatever, and they don't want to change, and they're not going to do it in their room. And it has to come from above, and it's a take it or leave it. This is what we're doing in the district. And if you don't, find another district to work in. But I mean, it's got to be really strong and from the top is what I think.
Well, and that begs that we have to have administrators also know the science of reading as well.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep, I agree. Letters has that, I'm not trying to
Promote.
spread or promote a
Promote.
business, but yes, letters has that administration training, training for letters. I forgot what it's called. Do you know what it is, Jeannie? It's letters.
Probably just letters for administrators. It's
Something like that. But I have looked into that so many times and thought, districts need something like this, because I agree, it has to come from the top. They're the ones making the decisions on what to bring to the school board to.
And wouldn't it be cool if even, if all of Door County or even one district would say, you know what, we're going to do this. And can you imagine if they wrote that reading scores rose that much in one district? People would be flocking to that district. People would be saying, what did you do? Show us,
Well, in our reality, like you pointed out, Carrie, at the beginning, is that in Wisconsin, we have 60% of the kids that aren't reading.
Mhm.
And so it's not just, it's our county, but
No.
Yeah, we've got some problems.
Yeah, Wisconsin needs some legislative change, and believe me, pay attention come January, because that is coming. Get ready to write some letters and to maybe, if you can, testify, because we need some major change. We need to keep rolling off of the guidebook, which in my opinion, I loved it, and it's getting the ball rolling, but it had no teeth.
Right.
It's
And I think
just
we all
a
work
start.
together to really work with legislators. I mean, that's going to be a big deal.
It is. And you have to know that the people that who the legislators listen to the most are you as parents, as us. The
And
fact
you can write letters too. So if you don't feel comfortable speaking
Yep.
or doing anything online, you can write letters to them.
from all the legislators that I have talked to, some of them were against the guidebook to begin with, until the public hearing, when crying parents showed up with their crying kids and showed so much passion for making a change. And I want to say 20% of them, 40% of them flipped and were like, whoa, wait a minute, we need to make some changes here. And that helped the progress, moving forward. And it definitely needs to be passionate and from the parents, because it's going to be interesting come the next session. We are pushing hard to make some major changes.
And I will say as a parent, from just research and that sort of thing, and being in the COVID environment, there are so many Facebook groups and free webinars and so many trainings. In fact, I'm even doing how to read brain scans from Stanford University so that I could sit there and understand and have conversations with doctors. So there is so many free trainings out there that you can do and take advantage of, whether you are a parent or a teacher. And I would just say, if there's someone who's watching this and think, maybe I'm not doing, I'm thinking back to a kid who was in my class, and maybe that was, dyslexia, and now I'm feeling guilty about it. Now that you know better, do better, and don't just feel guilty. Change what you do so that you can do better.
Because these are children's lives.
Mm-hmm. And remember, the ball gets rolling, but then we also have DPI who's making changes too. They have a new,
But it goes back to, you have those DPI things, but teachers have to have the capacity and the knowledge and to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Teachers
starts from the top.
Yep.
So this has been a wonderful discussion, everyone. We are at the 7 o'clock time. As you can tell, this is a topic that has a lot of depth. Know that there are multiple groups that are available that are on Facebook. There's the Decoding Dyslexia group. And I believe, Carrie, there's a Wisconsin, is it Region 7 that Door County is in for Decoding Dyslexia?
Yes. Yep.
And they
Isn't there
have
a specific Door County group too?
There's also a Door County support group. That's a Facebook group, just where we're sharing resources as we find them. And I know from the library's perspective, we have a page that we've created a brochure that helps in understanding if you have it, or kind of some next steps kinds of things. And then also how you can search in the library system for decodable books and that sort of thing. And so if you visit the doorcountylibrary.org website and click into the dyslexia awareness slider, you'll find that information. But reach out to other members, talk on your school board, talk to your teachers, talk to your special education department. If you feel like you're noticing that your child is doing some of the things that were discussed here tonight, and maybe you didn't feel comfortable speaking up, just reach out. So thank you all for coming. Any final words from our panelists?
Just, you know your child the best. You are their voice, and you have to fight for them. And believe me, it's not easy. I pretty much cry every single night to some sort of degree. It's stressful, but you know what? You're their voice. You're their champion in their corner, and just keep doing it.
I agree.
Add a little bit onto what Carrie said too, that, you know, I've met powerful advocates for their children through this process, and it's helped the school district. So I would agree greatly that parents, that you're a powerful force, and, you know, given the opportunity to work and collaborate has opened Sebastopol's eyes as well. So we look forward to that in the future for sure. It's been
I
hear
joined
this.
this. Yes, I agree. I joined the student learning committee, and I pretty much brought Grady's story right to the student learning committee, and I was at every single school board meeting, and again brought Grady's story right to the school board meeting, and was like, okay, this is what's happening with my son. We're going through this because we need changes. So keep being their voice, and even if you think they're not listening, they are.
They're listening.
Carrie, we do want to tell everybody that I was your teacher in 6th grade, right?
Yes. I got my fight from her. I'll just say that. Yep.
Oh, funny.
Well, thank you, everyone. If you would like, we'll be posting this video on the library's YouTube channel, so you can share that after it's uploaded here. Probably will be tomorrow morning. And join the Facebook groups or reach out to each other. I believe there's going to be a virtual parent chat coming up, Carrie, with this decoding.
Friday night. Yep, at 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock? No, yeah, 7 to 8:30 on Friday night.
So if you need the codes for that, I believe you can go to the Decoding Dyslexia Facebook group. Is that the best place, Carrie?
Yes.
Okay.
Or you can if you're on Facebook, just message me privately or reach out to me, and I can get you that link.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. We'll be ending now, and please keep reaching out, keep learning, and keep sharing with each other.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.